Okay, so I would have to say welcome to this first episode in a long new series of podcast episodes on sports and the workings in and around sports. So obviously, all you listeners out there, you would have to excuse us a little bit because we need to find our dynamic and how it works. And the dynamic we have to find is between Tony Paladin. He's our South African alibi. He's a former elite rower. He's a generally nice guy and he loves people. So, welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Arvid. Good to be here.
And you're just smiling and laughing. I like that. That's good. And in the middle of us, we have Dr. Hatim. You're going to love the picture we have for this episode. It's awesome. He's a great guy. He's just positive. He's positive to everything. He just, it doesn't matter if he shares it on LinkedIn or if he writes it or if he says it, he's always smiling. I love that. Welcome, Hatim.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the host. My name is Arvid. I'm from the. We're back from the north. Can I say it like that? You know, the north. The north is a good way. I'm usually in management consulting, but I love to venture over into sports, which is what we're doing. And last week, the three of us we read this article about Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini, who were acquitted for some corruption from a corruption scandal that happened back in 2015. And we're going to try to decipher whether it was actually an acquittal. Does this help FIFA? Does it help UEFA? It's obviously good for the guys themselves, but in general. And any takers? I'm going to give a summary first, but on top of your mind, I know you, Hatim, you have an affectionate relationship to Michel Platini.
Yes. Yes, it saddened me when all came out in 2015 to see such a historic name, such an idol for a whole generation, be smeared with a corruption charge. So it was very sad for me. But now I'm looking at it from a more distant perspective, and yeah, it's still sad for UEFA and FIFA, really, because what they do for the world, for the young people in the world, is amazing. Football raises people from the slums, and not just in Brazil and but also in Asia and Middle East and Africa. So yeah, it is very saddening, actually.
It's kind of the one thing that everyone can bond over. If you like football, you can walk in to a pub anywhere in the world and sit down and have friends immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, I love that fact. But how do we get into a situation? I'm going to give us 3 seconds. I'm going to give a backdrop. So what happened was that back in 2015, someone found out that Michel Platini had received about 2 million Swiss francs over a period of, it was quite a long period. I think it was from 1998 to 2002. So it's like 15 years. It's not a big sum of money. But somehow FIFA had found in their wisdom that giving that money to Platini without, writing any contracts or having any receipt, that was a good idea. And I don't quite understand how do we culturally inside a business get to that stage where this can pass through controllers, accountants, everyone, because everyone is there's literally a trail. When you push money somewhere, there's always going to be a trail. How does this happen?
I think one of the big things we've identified that often sports organizations are not treated like businesses in the strictest sense of the word. But I think to be completely frank and to shoot straight on this from personal experience, I have seen the inside of sports organizations that are considered to not be organizations. They're considered like boys' clubs. You can kind of, to an extent, do what you'd like. Obviously, things are changing as we rapidly enter today's day and age, but there's still a lot of sort of hangover legacy. So I think it's a pretty good place to kick off the discussion.
Hatim, this is literally things you know a lot about. How does this kind of culture evolve? How does it happen into management? These are billion-dollar industries. I think Coca-Cola put like $3 or $4 billion into sports just in the last 10 years alone.
It's yeah, hello. it's it's big business, and I
Yeah.
agree, Tony. I mean, it's somehow still considered a association. It's not a company, right? Football association. All these teams are
Mhm.
really trying to be close to the people, but at the same time, maybe they're being distant from governance for that. Um,
Mhm.
but on an individual basis, I mean,
Yeah.
even why does Michel Platini go that route, right? So,
Yeah.
from a human perspective, there is usually small steps at the beginning. It
Mhm.
it 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 seems innocuous. It seems small amount of money, some luxuries, some comfort, and then slowly the individual becomes complacent, and
Mhm.
things keep on happening, and the system feeds that because it's for the good of
The
the marketing, the sponsors, whatever it
it's
is.
better.
So there's
Yeah.
like a good reason behind it, quote unquote, and it brushes over the
What you say? The road
negativity
to hell is paved with good
with
intentions.
good intentions. Yes.
Yeah. No, but it has to be kind of like that because I can't. I know a guy like Sepp Blatter. If you're from Switzerland or you're from France, obviously you know you can't take something without giving. You can't just take money. You pay taxes in both those countries, and you know if you were 10 years old and you worked as in a I don't know a kiosk or a shop or something, you will have a slip telling the government how much money you made. It's just the way it works.
I
And
think
this it didn't happen just once. It was like from the period from 1998 to 2002. That's a 5-year period where you are
Eric,
sitting on the top of the mountain and just picking up money, believing it's okay. Tony, please enlighten me.
I think a recurring theme that keeps coming up here. I'll give
Yeah.
my little soliloquy on how we go from goodwill to corruption and potentially how that happens. I'd also
Mm-hmm.
like to just touch on how rules get bent, not necessarily broken, until they are broken. So I think
Mm-hmm.
what the way this slowly happens over time is, as Hatem said, everyone's got good intentions. It starts off with good intentions, and when you've got a combination of skill, good intentions, and talent, you normally do a good job. And when you do that, you
Mm-hmm.
get rewarded. So there's a natural reward
Yeah.
system. And as you get rewarded, that's good. You feel good about yourself. But as the rewards get bigger and bigger, the rewards sometimes outweighs your good work, your good works, and
Yeah.
especially in billion-dollar industries and in sports entities that have got mass viewership, your self-worth tends to elevate to a point where you effectively the rules don't really apply that much more, and a little bit of once the confidence is developed on top of good work,
Mm-hmm.
then the arrogance and the hubris starts to come along with it. And what as we go along, as you become a little bit more arrogant and on top of everybody else, and potentially hubris kicks in, and you don't necessarily see it like that, but other people's opinions become less important, and other people's opinions, often those where laws and governance are found, is on like a basic set of principles that govern
Mm-hmm.
humanity. Is those don't matter that much anymore. But it's still not malicious. It's just like laws become more like suggestions than anything else.
Guidelines.
And then as this eventually goes, you can become a little bit complacent toward said
Yeah.
rules. And then once the complacency kicks in and you get called with, and there's a potential consequence coming up, then all of a sudden there's a bit of backtracking. And that's when things just often start to cascade. I've got. I'll pick up on this when we as the discussion unfolds. But I've comprehensively looked at the motives behind, specifically behind what Blatter may or may not have,
Corruption.
and no,
Motives behind
and what
corruption.
Platini, whether there was a motive or it was a
Yeah.
reaction or a
Yeah.
bit of both,
Yeah.
whether it was
Yeah.
self-preservation or whether it was trying to topple the whole thing. It's actually quite interesting. As you ask a question, you've got another 5 questions that come with it, and then you really realize
Yeah.
that there's a perfect It's almost like a perfect storm. The timing of some of these things that eventually ended in tears couldn't have been any more better scripted to create the story than it actually did. So yeah, I think the good intention to chaos, it's a bit like a frog boil mentality. You know, if you chuck a frog into boiling water, it's going to hop straight out. But if you put something with good intentions and skill and talent who wants to get good at what they do, you just slowly turn up the heat until it doesn't realize and it's done. Excuse the
Because what we can bring into this to this case is what happened. The wider case of it was that the on the back burner of this, the U.S. Department of Justice indicted 40 individuals in FIFA for racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. That sounds like something the mafia would do. Like seriously. And they found the money trail for more than $150 million, um, linked to media and marketing rights that was kind of divided throughout and just went to the pockets of people. We spoke about it. We said that football was great because it includes little kids in Africa, all the things that kind of needs help. And all of a sudden, the management team is literally stealing that money. How did they figure out that this is okay?
It's very, very interesting. I think that there is a culture that is developing around sports, that
Mhm.
the integrity is not a strong suit of that culture.
No.
Um, Impressing, succeeding, winning, those are the big cultural values in the culture. This is my
Mhm.
observation as a consumer of sports. Um, so when you don't have a culture of integrity, meaning, and it goes with governance,
Mhm.
then it becomes okay. It becomes part of doing business. Back in the days, in the early 30s, when Western companies went to the Middle East, it was okay to give um, money to the leaders because that was part of the culture. They said,
Mhm.
until it changed. Now it's no longer part of the culture, but back then it was okay, and they had line items and they made
Yeah.
everything look okay. So this making things look okay is one of the ways that
Is that
these
something that's
leaders steal money from the top. Yeah.
is that something that's hardwired into us as humans, making things look okay?
Not really. No.
No.
No. We are hardwired for integrity.
Yeah.
We actually operate at highest performance when we are telling the truth.
That's
When
interesting.
we are not telling the truth, we activate so much more bandwidth, and it's not the efficient kind of bandwidth. It's the prefrontal cortex kind of bandwidth.
Okay.
So no, we are not wired for that. This has been acquired, and it has come up with the growth of the human brain to where it
Mhm.
is now. But the instinctive behaviors, the ingrained behaviors, are not about lying, except in very, very, very special cases where survival is on the line, and yes, it becomes natural for someone to lie to save someone's life, even in the early stages of humanity. So no, we're not wired for this. This is new.
So for management in general, to be truthful is literally something to strive for
Yes,
because it will make you a better person.
it's efficient.
Yeah.
The
It's
thing
very
is,
efficient. Yes.
it becomes the problem with a culture shift, and if you don't start with honesty and integrity and complete and open transparency from day one, it becomes
Mhm.
very difficult to revert back to it because um, if you look at we all know what's right and wrong, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's as Arvid mentioned somewhere along the line. If you do something bad, like it sits in the bottom of your stomach somewhere. But the problem is, it's the analogy of the two wolves. I don't know if you guys know you've got the good wolf and the bad wolf, or the light wolf and the dark wolf. Um,
Mhm.
they're both. They're both. It's an old Cherokee story about you've got these two wolves to feed. For those who don't know, and it's the white wolf's full of good, honesty, integrity, openness, philanthropy, all of those good things, and the bad wolf is full of greed, hate, dishonesty, um, and so on and so forth. So that's the good in mankind and the bad in mankind. And every single day, it is a person's choice as to to listen to these two wolves, and they're both going at you and going at you. And then, I mean, the whole thing is it's an old it's a folk story. My grandfather's talking about these two wolves, and the grandson eventually says, "Well, if a man is grappling with these two wolves every single day of his life, which is the wolf that's going to win?" And the grandfather says, "Well, it's the wolf you feed." So, I mean,
Mm.
ultimately, they can both be like young infant wolves from day one, but you start like just
Yeah.
dripping in little bits into the wrong wolf. It's eventually going to get bigger and stronger. And this is circling back to why this is, I think, quite important with regards to management. And this is why governance in play, and this is why the rules are there, is that they are there for a specific reason. Sure, I mean, challenge the rules by all means. I mean, some rules are meant to be challenged because they were just made up to be put there in the first place. But when it comes to common ethics and integrity, I think it's important that we generate a culture of complete transparency in sport, which is difficult because it's never been there. There's a
But
long legacy.
who can we blame? Why did Sepp Blatter, the chief of one of these organizations, give money to the chief of the other organization? Everyone, and both of them thought it was okay
I've got
that
a
he did that.
theory to challenge why.
Go, please.
I think I need to check my timelines 100%. I think, I mean, Blatter was initially, when he's quite early on in his term of being FIFA president, um, obviously, if advisory, any form of advisory from somebody with top stature is going to be a good idea. And
Mm.
Platini was that person. I mean, the guy was really I mean, he's a legacy in football. He understands the game backwards. So, in terms of reaching out for an advisory position, I think was done fairly openly, and I think Platini accepted it because there was a lot of gratitude involved in that. Whether there was an underlying motive at that particular point in time, I don't know. I think Platini possibly walked into it being like, "Hey, this is cool. I can give back to the sport." His bigger vision was obviously to become the president of FIFA down the line, and this was a pretty good start to that journey.
Mm.
Correct? You may welcomely stop me if you think I'm wrong.
No, that,
Black,
that
Black
that's probably the best explanation I've heard. A former footballer who has been, I think he was president in Juventus for a short period, something like that. I might be wrong on that, but I think he was involved in some football club. That he at some point figures out that, yeah, I can be an advisor. I can help people, and these are people with a lot of money. They're not short on cash at all. And okay, Sepp Blatter wants him to help out. Okay, so he gets an advisory role, and maybe they just never formalized it. As stupid as it sounds.
well, naive.
Very
I'm,
naive.
I'm I'm gonna go with stupid because both of these guys they have been involved in enough negotiations throughout their time to know that at some point, if you're going to give some money from an organization to someone, you're going to need someone to sign some sort of contract somewhere, somehow. It's just going to be like that. So, yeah, call it naive. I'm going
Or
to call that,
napkin.
okay, forgetful to my advantage, but still, hey, because the thing for me is that we're kind of touching up on it. And this broke open a door into a much wider scandal that showed, everything from buying the rights to different tournaments and stuff. Just a full disclaimer: we are not saying that anyone did something wrong. To just make that quite quite clear. But there are things here that seems a little unkosher, to put it like that.
Um,
There's $150 million that we don't really know where ended up. And we do know that some of those money were inside bags moving around in New York around the world championship in the United States. We know that these money never had any contracts either. So obviously something's been happening, but let's forget about that. Divide the consequences.
I think, I mean, for starters,
Yeah.
there could have been a million, because it's quite a complicated thing. There could be a
Yeah.
million permutations to every step in the process
Hmm.
that implicates one person and unimplicates another. We just will never know. But I mean, one theory is you know Platini comes along, he gets approached by Blatter. Blatter's like, it's quite flattering when you get approached based on your merits as a footballer, very strategic guy with a sharp brain, approached to be an advisor for FIFA. It's a feather in your cap. You think, cool, that's I'm going to run with this. You also then go, you know what, I am good at what of what I do. I'm not that, I've got three Ballon d'Ors behind me. I mean, I'm an expert in my own right. I'm not going to get paid nothing. If you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So he potentially said to FIFA, look, pay me for my worth because I'm good. Blatter probably went, the guy, he is that good, so let's pay. At that particular point in time, to reflect that on the FIFA books, potentially wouldn't have looked so hot
Hmm.
for Blatter, but he needed the advisory. He agreed to pay it on a handshake deal, which was great.
Yeah.
Platini continued his work, believing that, hey, look, I'm delivering for FIFA and I'm getting paid a fortune, but he probably never had I was going to use another word, the guts to actually go back to FIFA and say, look, let's cash this thing in. And I think at that particular point in time, um, uh, Platini was also courting UEFA, and it would have looked a bit dodgy to be receiving large amounts of money from FIFA during that bid. So he thought, I'll keep that one on the back burner. Years went by, careers diverged a little bit. And then we came into when I think it was 2011 or so, when all of a sudden a whole bunch of stuff started uncracking, and that's when that invoice finally got issued. I think at that particular point in time, Platini had secured a position within UEFA quite firmly. I think Blatter was looking to for re-election, but he was having a very strong challenge from the Qatar guy, Hammam, I think is his name, for the presidency. So he may well have lost it. I think then Platini turned around and looked at this going, well, you know what, if I don't cash my deal in now on a
Hmm.
napkin arrangement or a handshake, I'm never going to see the money. I've got a pretty good shot of getting in for FIFA president, but my bid's only in 2015. Blatter might well lose out in 2011. Then the entire European block, quote unquote, gets lost because you've now got a Middle Eastern influence. Let's just fire off that invoice and let it get paid. Up to this
No,
point, who's done something
no.
wrong?
It makes sense.
Sorry, I'm being the devil's
Obviously.
advocate on this because
No, 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 you're not. I think it's a good take, basically. But still, as I said, you are managing these great organizations, and they are great in the sense that they are major. They are worldwide. Have representatives in every country, every region, and you can find kids playing football from the Amazons to Serengeti to Kautokeino, which is a place you probably haven't heard of. It's a small town in the northern part of Norway where only Lapps live. However, these things, obviously, from a personal point of view, is okay. But they are representing these organizations. They're not just representing them; they are spearheading them. They are the head on the snake for both of them. Hatim, how does people in those positions not recognize the importance of their actions? How do we get to that point?
Yeah, very good question.
Yeah.
It all hangs on the mandate. Like,
Hmm.
what is their mandate? What do they believe their mandate is?
Yeah.
In some situations, if the mandate is put as, we want your name, we want, they lift up the person that's going to take the role, and your name is everything, the reputation, you're going to make the sport
Hmm.
grow. And that could be a very legitimate way of putting it.
Hmm.
And the person then takes that on and say, yeah, this is good, it checks all my ethical boundaries, it checks all
Hmm.
my psychological needs, it checks my bank account. Right? It's very good all around.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and then again, it starts usually in a very acceptable way. The entry point has to be acceptable, because that is the point where you are most likely to reject something. That is the time where you have very little at stake and you can weigh the decision to the best of your capability. The more you get into it, the
Yeah.
more you get into the role and you get disillusioned sometimes, or you get taken away by the amount of money that's floating around, and then now your situation changes and you become biased, you don't make as good decisions, and you end up doing something that, 5 years ago when you joined the role, like, impossible for me to accept this. But you get into all these, we see this in presidents. There
Mm.
are new presidents, like when Obama came into office. He had a rude awakening as to how the system was
Yeah.
working inside. Once
Yeah.
you're in, he realized, oh my gosh, my hands are tied. I cannot really do. I'm not really the decision maker here. There are so
No.
many other stakeholders, and
Mm.
they start changing. So they veer away from those campaign promises
Yeah.
because they can't. I read his book, very well
Mm.
written book, and
Mm.
he kept saying, I did the best I could with the power I had,
Yeah.
and he didn't have that much power, to be honest.
No.
So same thing happens at the level of UEFA and FIFA. Is you get into that culture, you get into that way of doing business, and it becomes normal. It normalizes.
Yeah.
And because I believe FIFA and UEFA don't have a strong culture of integrity. And how do you build a strong culture of integrity? I worked for a long time for a company, one of the top, in my view, one of the top
Yeah.
ethical companies. It's a private company out of the US,
Mm.
very large, multi-billion-dollar
Yeah.
revenue. And when you join the company, you have to watch a video by the CEO and chairman of the board,
Mm.
whose name is the name of the company, right? And he says very clearly, let me start off. If you do anything in my company that brings the impression or the perception that my name is associated with something that's unethical or wrong, I will saw the limb that you're on without asking any question. In other words, I'll let you go in an
Mm.
instant, even if it's perception,
Yeah.
even if you haven't done something wrong, but the media turns around and say, "Ooh, there's allegation. This company is maybe doing this." So he made it very clear from the get-go what the culture of integrity is, and then
Mm.
walking the talk as well. So he would show examples here and there. So it's important that the leadership displays this for everyone else at lower levels to go along with the game. And I don't see that in the leadership of FIFA and UEFA.
How do we get to a position where that will be part of the culture? What can we do? What can they do? Obviously.
Well, first of all, you have to have the desire. I mean, what you and I want from our places is not necessarily what they want.
No.
And when you get to that place, there is no way of knowing what is your ideal, what is your value, right? So I asked myself a question while Tony was talking. He brought up something very
Mm.
interesting: is does it matter? Does this subject matter to the millions of World Cup fans, or does it not?
Well, that's a great question because that will into the marketing space, obviously, because that brings two questions on top of that. First and foremost, if it matters, if it doesn't matter to the footballing people or the fans, that has one consequence because they'll still go to the games and Coca-Cola will still sponsor the next World Cup and Championship. However, if there is a bad culture, and as I said, there's a wider scope from this case where they are missing 150 million dollars, and obviously these 150 million dollars is supposed to go back to local federations and help footballing initiatives throughout the world. Now you can do a lot of football for $1 million in sub-Sahara, for example.
Absolutely.
There's layers and layers and layers here. Well, proof of concept. Obviously, fans doesn't care. They are still flocking to the game in larger numbers than ever. There's been no boycott of any major tournaments or anything. However, we do not know how much There could have been more, obviously, if it didn't happen. That's difficult to say anything
We'll never
about.
know. We'll never
But
know.
in general, wouldn't you both kind of agree that, cultural wise, it would be nice that if elected federations had were a little more aware of the visuals of how this seems or how it looks from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, you've always got three truths. You
Mm,
know, you've got the media's truth, you've got maybe the fans' truth, and then you've got the actual truth.
mm,
And often the media will sculpt a story that's actually not the truth that biases the fans. So it depends on the narrative
mm,
that you actually and how you frame it. It's the message you want to convey. Um, this particular matter that we're talking about now is It's quite exemplary in
mm.
specifically in the world of football. But I mean, I'm not going to say it's only football. I'm going to say
No.
many big sports that have got rich legacies and histories potentially model themselves off the way that things were done in the 20s and the
Mm.
30s and the 50s and the 60s and right up until like the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s. It's only now when I think as sport is being a lot more professional that I think this, where it matters to the fans is the narrative should always be like, this is how far we've come. Because at the end of the day, what does the fan want to see? What does, I mean, they want to watch football, right? I mean, that's what they want to see. It's always fun to follow these sagas because it's like a bit like a soap opera. But, at the end of the day, does it affect the fan? I don't think so. Um, I think the person that does affect is the little kid in sub-Saharan Africa who does not
Yeah.
get the ability to potentially become the next Messi or Ronaldo. I think that kid
Mhm.
he misses his dreams and ends up becoming a gardener
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the fact that a million, I mean, just if you say there's 150 million missing, that could have been a portion of that given to football development. I think 1 million to a small country. You're not telling me you could
Mhm.
find one kid in that entire country who's going to potentially be
For
playing
sure.
within the Premier League in the next 10 to 15 years, and that's where I think it's going to hurt the most because you're not. It actually cuts it off at the grassroots development level than anything else, and I think the fat get fatter and the poor starve.
So I see we have already passed half an hour. So I'm going to try to summarize and lead us out. The thing we can say is that for people in position, at least in the big federations, make sure that even though you do everything you want, it is done with all the best intentions through and through, like Platini advising Sepp Blatter back in 1998 before he was a prominent figure in European of the administrative side of European football. At the end of the day, these small things can have major consequences, and it can establish a culture that's really really bad, and not necessarily bad, but as you were speaking about Hatim, about the small steps all the way. And at the end of the day, here we are 27 years later, and there are kids missing out on football because of that, you know, detail. Because literally, it was probably a detail. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't to be a bad guy. It was just okay. We are just rushing it. We don't need the paper. We'll fix it later. So the fix it later attitude in major organizations is a bad thing.
Yep. Kick the can down the road.
Yeah. Okay, I actually had a lot of questions for us from different from people I've been speaking to because they heard we were going to start a podcast. But I'll bring them in next time. So I'll bring on another segment then. I think this was fun. How about you guys? So far, so good.
Very good.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just getting started,
Yeah.
and you're trying to show us the door.
So many other things we could be talking about.
I know
Yeah,
this.
this is wow.
Listen, I've my filter's been on. I haven't even taken my filter off yet.
No, if you guys want to go, we can keep going. But I think like we are on 35 minutes now, and I think that's a good format. We'll rather do a second episode, I think that can be useful.
What
So
I'd
with
love
that,
of it is if people could ask questions on this, but I want the difficult questions, like the hard ones that like
Yeah.
people, like, you got to be very careful what you put on social media to not get burnt out. Like ask
I
those
can give
questions.
I can give you one question right now that's difficult because we are talking about culture. Literally, this is culture. It's a cultural element. When things get to be good or bad, it's still a cultural element. Now, I'm a hunter and I have hunting dogs. And if you have 5 hunting dogs living outside in a dog yard and they start barking at people, and these are dogs, they are you teach them with treats. Can you teach 5 dogs standing outside not to start barking on strangers? Because if you can't teach 5 dogs standing outside barking at strangers, you are complete control of how to not bark at strangers. How do you change the culture in a major organization? Any takers? How do
Yeah.
we do it?
The leaders.
Yeah,
Leaders define the culture. And leaders have to figure out their dilemmas. There's dilemmas where they must choose between their stakeholders.
yeah,
And we're in a situation where the leaders are saying, in my view, it's
mm,
okay for the dogs to bark at the people.
yeah,
Well, I don't need to do anything about it. Why do you want me to waste treats to figure that out? I don't want to do it, and nobody wants me to do it.
mm,
So this is where we are. I mean, we started touching on a very interesting subject. We could
yeah,
do a whole episode on it, which is the stakeholders.
yeah.
Is it the fans or is it the future Messis?
Mm. So, well, okay, I'm gonna leave us on that note because that's something. If there's anyone out there listening, it would be nice to have your take on it and get back to us. And yeah, this is the start of many, many, many discussions. So thank you so much, Hatim. Thank you so much, Tony. This
Thank you,
is
Arvid.
Arvid, and we'll see you later.
Sounds
So I